This is, without much competition, the most beloved fictional train in the world. A gleaming scarlet steam engine, a plume of white smoke curving across a stone viaduct in the Scottish Highlands, carrying a generation of children to a school for wizards. It's magical. It's iconic. It's been printed on lunchboxes, built in Lego, and tattooed on actual human beings. It is also, to anyone who actually knows how British railways work, a rolling catalogue of crimes. Wrong engine, wrong station, wrong color, wrong route, wrong decade. The Hogwarts Express is so confidently, gloriously wrong that a railway historian can't watch that beautiful Glenfinnan shot without quietly twitching. And here is the strange part. The closer you look at everything the films got wrong, the more you stumble onto something they got accidentally, wonderfully right. Because hiding underneath all the fiction is a real train, on a real line, that is every bit as magical as the made-up one, and almost nobody realizes they could just go and ride it. So today we're going to do something a little affectionate. We're going to take the most magical train in cinema and hand it over to a railway engineer who is going to pick it apart lovingly, one error at a time. And then, right at the end, we're going to find the real magic that was there the whole time. Let's start with the engine itself, because it has a secret identity that's even funnier than the films intended. The locomotive that plays the Hogwarts Express is real, and rail fans of a certain age recognize it on sight. It is a Great Western Railway Hall class, number 5972, built at the famous Swindon Works in 1937 and originally named Olton Hall. It's a genuine piece of British steam history. It was worked hard for decades, withdrawn in the early 1960s, sent to a scrapyard in South Wales to rust away, and then rescued, restored, and brought back to life, returning to steam in 1998. 3 years later, it was cast as the most famous train on the planet, repainted, given a new identity, and pointed at a camera. Today it sits, polished and still, in the studio tour outside London, where millions of fans have stood next to it without realizing they're looking at a working-class freight and mixed traffic engine that has been promoted by Hollywood far above its station. And that's where the first joke begins. Because for the films, they didn't just repaint the Olton Hall, they renamed it on screen, and on its nameplates the engine is called Hogwarts Castle. And to a British railway enthusiast, that single word is hilarious. Because Hall and Castle weren't just names, they were two completely different classes of Great Western locomotive. The Castle class was the big one, the express passenger thoroughbred, more powerful and more prestigious. The Hall class, the one we're actually looking at, was the smaller, humbler, hardworking cousin. So by naming a Hall Castle, the films did the locomotive equivalent of putting a mid-size family sedan on screen and slapping a Ferrari badge on the back. It is, quite literally, a hall pretending to be a castle. The mismatch was so well known that even the model train company that made the toy version reportedly made theirs as a castle, because the name said one thing and the metal said another. The engine has been living a lie since 2001, and most of the world never noticed. But the engine pretending to be grander than it is, that's just the warm-up. The real problems start the moment that train pulls into a station. So stay with me, because this next one is the error that makes British rail fans truly wince. The Hogwarts Express departs, famously, from London King's Cross. And here is the issue. King's Cross is one of the great London terminals, but it has always belonged to a very specific railway. It was the southern gateway of the East Coast Main Line, the domain of the London and Northeastern Railway, the LNER. The expresses that thundered out of King's Cross and raced north were LNER engines. The most famous of them all, the streamlined A4 Pacifics, the family that includes Mallard, the holder of the world steam speed record, were built for exactly this line. That is what should be sitting at the head of a King's Cross Express, bound for Scotland. What is absolutely historically, regionally wrong is a Great Western Railway engine. The GWR was the other end of the country. Its trains ran west, out of London Paddington, toward Bristol, Wales, and Cornwall. A Great Western Hall class simply did not and could not work expresses out of King's Cross. The two railways were rivals, with their own engines, their own liveries, their own territory. Putting the Olton Hall at King's Cross is like watching a film set in New York where the hero hails a London black cab. It's a real vehicle, it's just been kidnapped from completely the wrong part of the map. For a British enthusiast, the Hogwarts Express is wearing the wrong team's colors in the wrong team's stadium. Which brings us, neatly, to the colors. Because that famous, beautiful, unmistakable scarlet red, it's fiction. It corresponds to no real British Express engine of the steam era. Our Hall class, the Olton Hall, would in real life have worn the deep, handsome Brunswick green of the Great Western Railway, green, not red. The various Great British Railway companies each had their own liveries, their own shades, fiercely guarded, and a working Great Western engine in bright crimson would have been unthinkable. The Hogwarts red is a movie invention, a costume, chosen because it looks magical on screen against the green Scottish hills, which it absolutely does. It just happens to be a color this engine and this railway never wore in their lives. And now we come to the big one. The error so large you can see it from space, or at least from a map. The route, the single most iconic shot in the entire series is the Hogwarts Express curving across the Glenfinnan Viaduct, that gorgeous arc of stone in the Highlands. And that viaduct is real. It carries a real railway, the West Highland Line, which runs between Fort William and Mallaig on the rugged west coast of Scotland. It is one of the most beautiful train journeys on Earth. There's just one problem. It is nowhere near King's Cross, and it does not connect to it in anything like the way the films imply. To get a steam train from London King's Cross to that viaduct in the Western Highlands, you would not glide there in one magical, unbroken journey. You'd travel up the East Coast, then cross the entire width of the country, change engines several times, and join a completely separate line that winds through the mountains to the far west. The Hogwarts Express, as shown, travels from a London terminus on the east to a viaduct in the far northwest in a single seamless run across a railway network that does not actually connect those 2 points like that. It's not a journey. It's a geographic teleportation with a steam plume. And even if the geography worked, there's the small matter of the calendar. The story is set in the 1990s, but regular steam traction on Britain's main lines ended in 1968. By the time our young wizards are riding to school, steam locomotives had been gone from everyday British railways for decades, surviving only on heritage lines and special charters. So the idea of an entire school every single year moving hundreds of children the length of Great Britain behind a mainline steam engine in the 1990s isn't just unusual, it's an era that had already ended. It would be like a modern school busing its students to class in a fleet of horse-drawn carriages. Charming, completely impractical, and about 30 years out of date. Now, those are the serious crimes, the ones that genuinely make an engineer put their head in their hands. But the films are stuffed with smaller, sillier errors too, and these ones are more fun than infuriating. So if you enjoy watching beloved films get gently taken apart by the laws of the railway, or you want more breakdowns of the trains hiding in famous movies, leave a comment and subscribe, because the history of trains on screen is a rich seam of this stuff, and there is plenty more where this came from. Let's start with the most famous wall in the world, platform 9 3/4. The whole premise is that you run at the brick barrier between platforms 9 and 10 and slip through. It's brilliant. It's also geographically impossible at the real King's Cross, where platforms 9 and 10 are not a cozy pair separated by a single wall you could charge through. In the actual station, they're split apart with railway tracks running between them. The filmmakers knew this, which is why the platform scenes weren't even shot at the real platforms 9 and 10 at all. And the famous tourist trolley, the half-vanished luggage cart that fans queue for hours to photograph, was installed on a wall in the station concourse that isn't between the real 9 and 10 either. So the single most photographed spot in the entire Harry Potter universe is, strictly speaking, at the wrong wall. The magic was retrofitted to the architecture. Then there's the fuel, which nobody in the films ever seems to think about. A steam locomotive is a hungry, thirsty beast. A Hall class like our Olton Hall needs to take on water every 50 to 80 kilometers or so, and coal every few hundred. The journey from London to the Scottish Highlands is the better part of 800 kilometers. So somewhere on this magical, non-stop cross-country epic, that engine needs to stop repeatedly to be watered and have tons of coal shoveled into its tender. Where does it happen? Is there a secret enchanted water tower halfway up the country? Does Hogwarts have its own coaling stage and a team of firemen waiting at the far end? Because that fire doesn't burn on willpower. Somebody is shoveling several tons of coal into that firebox across the length of Britain, and it is very much not Hagrid. And the carriages themselves carry a quiet, slightly dark irony. The train is made up of old British rail compartment coaches, the kind with separate little enclosed rooms opening off a side corridor. By the 1990s, those compartment carriages were being phased out of mainline service, and one of the big reasons was safety. Isolated compartments, where a passenger could be cut off, alone, with no easy way to call for help, were exactly the wrong design for a crowded railway, which is of course precisely the setup the films use again and again. The lonely compartment where the troubled kid sits by himself, the corridor encounter with something menacing. The carriage that was being retired from the real railway for being unsafe became the perfect stage for a children's adventure, for exactly the reasons it was being retired. So that's the charge sheet. Wrong engine, wrong railway, wrong color, impossible route, wrong decade, the wrong wall, and no obvious way to feed the fire. By any honest engineering standard, the Hogwarts Express is a beautiful disaster. And this is the moment where most videos would end, with a smug little laugh at Hollywood's expense. But I don't want to end it there, because there's a twist, and it's the best part of the whole story. Because while the films were busy inventing a magical train that breaks every rule of the railway, they were filming it on a line that needed no invention at all. That viaduct, those mountains, that impossible looking journey through the Highlands is served to this day by a real steam train that anyone can buy a ticket for. It's called the Jacobite. It runs in the summer months between Fort William and Mallaig, hauled by genuine preserved steam locomotives, and it crosses the Glenfinnan Viaduct in a slow, breathtaking curve, exactly like the shot you know by heart. It is regularly and accurately described as one of the most magical train journeys in the entire world. And the Olton Hall, the very engine that played the Hogwarts Express, ran on that exact West Highland line for the filming. So here is the thing the railway engineer wants you to understand, underneath all the grumbling. The films didn't need to invent the magic, they borrowed it. The real route over Glenfinnan, with real steam, real smoke, and real mountains, was already one of the most enchanting things on the entire railway network. Hogwarts didn't conjure a fantasy out of nothing. It pointed a camera at something that genuinely exists, dressed it in a red coat in a wizard school, and we all fell in love with the costume, never realizing the magic underneath it was real and bookable and waiting in the Highlands the whole time. And that's why the errors don't actually matter. Yes, the engine is from the wrong railway, wearing the wrong color, pulling the wrong way across an impossible map in a decade that had no steam. Every bit of that is true, and every bit of it is wrong. But the films took a real, beautiful, half-forgotten corner of the British Railway and made the whole world adore it, to the point that people travel from across the planet to stand on that viaduct and watch a steam train go by. An engineer can list a dozen mistakes, but getting a generation of children to fall in love with a steam train crossing a stone viaduct in the rain, that the engineers got exactly right. So the next time you see that scarlet engine curve across Glenfinnan, you're allowed to wince at the livery and roll your eyes at the route and mutter that it's a hall pretending to be a castle. But then remember that somewhere up in the Highlands, the real thing is steaming over that same viaduct right now, no spells required. The magic was always real, they just gave it a paint job. And if you think a wizarding school is the worst offender Hollywood has ever put on a railway, wait until you see what a certain Christmas film tried to get away with on a train supposedly powered by belief and almost no working brakes. but that's a journey for another night.